This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, we discover that baby boomers are still taking away our cell phones in the distant future.
Hello, I am Gepwin. Welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow. I am joined as always by my good friend, Dr. Isix.
Hi.
And this week we watched the original Star Trek episode, Miri.
Yes.
So far, one of the most nonsensical names of the whole thing.
Well, it is there is a reason for the name, but it's sort of like, okay, why did you pick this name?
Yeah, it's also only introduced about 2/3 of the way through the episode.
Yeah, it's like, okay, now it makes sense, kind of.
Well, this just to go into, I really hope we have more to talk about, because very little actually happens in this episode, and I think I've wound up with my shortest synopsis so far.
Oh my.
Because, so little actually goes on.
Maybe we'll have our first under-hour episode here.
Maybe. We thought that last time. We wound up recording for 2 hours.
True. Oh no, that means we're going to be here until sometime this evening. Oh no, you have stuff to do. I have stuff to do. What?
We sacrifice for this show, and I hope everyone appreciates it.
Yes.
All right, this episode we are guest starring. We only have a few guest stars and a lot of child actors.
Yes.
We have Kim Darby as the titular Miri, who some people may know went on to play Maddie in the 1969 version of True Grit.
Don't think I've seen that.
We have Michael J. Pollard as John, who is 27 at the time of this episode. That will become relevant later.
He has kind of baby face thing going on. So.
A little bit. And then just a lot of children who are actually the children of cast and crew members, including Shatner's daughter. Grace Lee Whitney, who plays Rand, has her 2 sons in this. There's just everybody. I think Gene Roddenberry's daughters are in it as well.
So in other words, it's Bring Your Kid to Work Day.
Yeah, it is Bring Your Kid to Work Day. And I just heard, I was hoping this had passed, but I am recording this during what appears to be a thunderstorm. So I apologize for any undue background noise, but I do not have control over the weather yet.
So have I talked on the show about Brem's strong radiation from lightning strikes yet?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's a thing. So obviously Gepwood's going to get superpowers sometime during today's episode.
The Flash has always been my favorite superhero.
Go faster. Go fast.
That's Sonic.
Oh yes. Well, he also goes fast.
Okay. Before we get too much more sidetracked.
Yes.
Synopsis. The Enterprise has picked up an Earth-style SOS signal, which is coming from the 3rd planet in the solar system they're in.
Oh, that's kind of weird. It's actually like an SOS, like on the radio, and you like beep, 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 and all that.
Yeah, so they keep calling it an Earth-style signal, which I guess would be pretty unusual. They are apparently hundreds of light years from Earth at this point.
Yes, somewhere out in deep space.
Spock begins to list facts about the planet the signal is coming from, such as how much it weighs and its median density and size.
And these things that obviously everyone who's watching the show should know what they're sort of referencing with these particular numbers, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows this offhand because the bridge crew apparently uses these to recognize the planet as Earth. And sure enough, as soon as Rand announces it's Earth, we get a view of the view screen that very clearly shows Africa.
Yep. Well, I guess you got the thunderstorms already. I guess we are down for the rains in Africa. Yes, Earth. It's Earth. It was Earth all along. Wait.
It was Earth. Well, it was Earth all along. They just didn't find it till now. So,
yes.
But Kirk says that it's not Earth. It's another Earth.
Earth 2. A clone of Earth.
Wasn't that a different show?
Oh, yeah, that was a show, wasn't it? I remember that. It's about colonizing a planet, and they had like an accident in the first episode, and all their life pods were like dumped around, and like there's aliens, and some of them tried to kill people.
Sounds like a lot of 90s sci-fi shows.
Yep.
That is the entire intro. They find another Earth. Captain's log. We found another Earth.
Surprise!
In case you missed it, 10 minutes ago, we found another Earth. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Rand, for some reason, beam down to the site of the distress signal with 2 red shirts.
Yep.
Spock reports that this looks like a dilapidated town that is from Earth's 1960s. He like pinpoints it exactly somehow.
Yeah, when I first saw the set, I put down in my notes, looks like a Hollywood set for the 30s.
Yeah, well, there's some stuff about that I'll mention in our fun facts.
Yes.
The natural decay on the planet has been tearing up the buildings for a few centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk finds a dilapidated tricycle, which they just all pass around in silence awkwardly.
Yep.
And then just as McCoy is putting it down, a humanoid creature yells mine and jumps him.
Oh no, we're being attacked by Morlocks.
Yeah. Kirk then punches the thing that attacked them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot in the face. While two of them are holding this thing, and Kirk is just punching it in the face repeatedly.
It's like, I could use my phaser on stun, but I just want to punch things today.
The mutant thing starts crying about how the tricycle is broken. Kirk says that it has the mind of a child, but they want to help him. And the mutant yells liar and then immediately dies.
It's dead.
Yeah, McCoy just does an it's dead, not he's dead, Jim.
Yes.
Yeah. But McCoy says with his scans that it's like the creature aged several centuries in just the last few minutes.
Yeah, its metabolic rate went through the roof. It's like, oh my god.
Super aging.
Yes.
Kirk hears a noise, and they all go run off and stare into nothing for a little while. Then they hear another noise, and again, run away from the camera to a door, which they just do this so much this episode. There's a lot of random running outside.
We have to go over here. There's something going on. What is it? We don't know.
Kirk and crew follow the sounds to a closet where they find a young girl who seems to think that they're going to hurt her and is completely unconvinced by their reassurance. McCoy asks what could have happened to make her so terrified of them other than the fact that they just appeared out of thin air and beat up someone to death.
Yep. Just this alien invasion,
Spock and the red shirts go outside to look for more survivors, while Kirk and Rand and McCoy stay with the young girl. She begins to monologue. She calls them grups. And says that grups used to yell and burn and hurt, and she's very scared and agitated. Kirk asks what happened to everyone, and she says that they should know because they're doing a foolie. She then immediately clarifies that foolie is apparently her word for game, and Rand guesses that grups is some sort of odd abbreviation of grown-ups. This has been our first lesson in utterly pointless dumb language.
Yep. We gotta have some slang here to demonstrate that these are the young people of today.
The young people of tomorrow are just so stupid.
Yep.
She says that all of the grups got sick and started to yell and hurt, and then were gone. It's very descriptive.
Yep.
McCoy says that this sounds like a plague, and that could have explained what happened. Kirk asks where the children are and if they were affected, and she says, well, we're still here, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, I guess that does kind of explain some things. What? More than one of you?
Kirk asks her name. She says that it's Miri, and Kirk starts flirting with the preteen girl.
Yeah, so in my notes, yes, I have down, Kirk says it's a pretty name for a pretty young woman, and then I have in parentheses, Kirk, no!
Soft focus.
Yes, and then very pretty, parentheses, now all bold and capitalized, Kirk, no!
Not only that, but the way that they film it is exactly the same as any time any woman before this has been flirting with Kirk.
Yeah, so creepy.
Yeah, it's like soft focus lighting, weird goo goo eye shots. Oh, no. Just so much no.
Now, it's important to note that the actress is actually 19, but still, she's being portrayed as a young adolescent girl.
Yeah, and it doesn't make it even any particularly less creepy because Shatner is still, in his 30s at this point.
Yes.
So you still shouldn't be flirting with an 18 or 19-year-old.
It's definitely one of those, you gods, man. Could you, not?
And then in the context of the episode, she's supposed to be a pre-adolescent.
So, Kirk, you're really kind of creepy. Again, but in a worse fashion than normal.
We're spending a little bit of time on this, but I just want to emphasize for people who haven't seen it, this is creepy. This is very creepy. It's not just some kind of oh, hi, what's your name, John? I like that name. No, it's, oh, what a pretty name you have, little girl.
charming smile with little like ding, like just shining of light off the tooth. And like, oh, you're trying to be Prince Charming here. Oh no.
Yeah. Back outside, Spock and the guards are led around by kid noises. We do not see any of the kids, we just hear laughing and such. They then have a bunch of rocks dropped on them in an alleyway. The children, who we still can't see, start chanting nya 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 nya.
Yep.
Which it sounds a little bit like the na 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 that kids theoretically say, even though I've never heard a child say that in my life. Yeah, it's kind of like that, and it's just different enough to be sort of annoying, but not different enough for you to think it's a different language or something alien.
It's like something familiar, but still kind of what?
Yeah.
I have in my notes. It's also it's annoying.
It's very annoying. Spock reports back that there are tons of children around, but they can't get close to them because they scurry away like animals. It's a lot of weird references. Spock makes a lot of weird references to the children as animalistic.
Is it because he's the Vulcan side of him doesn't like human children?
Probably.
So I guess all McCoy's abuse for Spock is finally coming around. McCoy, you perpetuating these cycles of abuse, you bastard.
They just do that in this show. It's a thing. Kirk says that they should look for the old medical records to figure out what's going on. He asks Miri where the doctors used to be, but she doesn't want to go there because it's a horrible, dangerous place. But he just flirts with her some more until she agrees to take them. Yeah. He kind of really creepily grabs her chin because she's kind of got downcast, shy eyes, and he grabs her chin to look at her. But then she notices that he has a weird purple sore on his hand and freaks out.
Oh no.
And says that soon he's going to be just like all the other grups that attacked and killed everyone.
This seems like a bad thing.
We go to Captain's log. They all have a disease except Spock, and they've set up in an old lab to help them analyze the plague.
Yeah, because we've got to at least have someone here who maintains themselves through the episode.
Yeah, you'd assume so. McCoy orders new equipment to be sent down. The communications officer, who is not Uhura in this episode, your old one woman per episode thing. That seems to be the trend. This is also the same guy that sort of looks like he needs a hamburger, I think, right? Yeah, same dude from the last, wasn't the last episode, it was 2 episodes ago. We do so many of these, I'm confused.
Yeah, he definitely looks like he's like half starved, like super high metabolism, like super skinny guy.
Yeah. That guy. He says that there are tons of volunteers who want to beam down and help them, but Kirk orders no one else should come down and get the plague.
Because that would be stupid.
Yeah. Kirk and McCoy speculate about why Spock is not infected. McCoy is a bit racist again, saying maybe the disease doesn't like green blood, and then Spock makes fun of McCoy for using an old microscope. Kirk and Spock both read reports on something called the Life Prolongation Project, which McCoy says they must not have had much luck with.
Clearly, because everyone's dead except for these kids.
McCoy continues to work while Spock realizes that the children seem to be unaffected by the disease, and then he just goes over and asks McCoy whether there are certain glandular changes that happen as children enter puberty.
Oh, yes.
And McCoy is like, yeah, you know that, you moron. And then he's like, well, of course you know that. Why did you ask me that? I'm having an epiphany about how this plague probably only affects adults. Oh my God. Who would have thought?
We have some really obvious dots to connect here. Oh my.
Yeah. He says that maybe the children aren't affected by the disease until they age into puberty, and then once they do, they contract the disease and die. Kind of like that thing they were attacked by at the beginning of the episode was probably a kid a few days ago.
Yeah.
But if all the adults died about 300 years ago, how can there be any children? And if all the children die when they enter puberty, where are they getting any more children?
It's a good question. It's the mystery of the episode at last.
Rand starts saying some weird stuff about why does Miri want to stay with the adults if she's been a feral animal child her entire life. Kirk says that he thinks children have an instinctive need for adults to tell them the difference between right and wrong. Kirk needs to stop doing psychology.
Kirk, you're not good at this being a parental figure sort of wisdom fount here. You don't know what you're talking about.
Children might have an instinctive need for adults because of the social nature of our species, or wanting food.
Yes.
Maybe not for a moralistic lesson.
Yeah, it's like same thing that would attract them to, say, another child who is able to provide them, companionship and, food resources, is the same reason they might be attracted to an adult who can also, house and feed them and, and be there when they're upset.
Huh. But speaking of being attracted to an adult,
Not
Spock
again.
says there may be other emotions that are making Miri want to hang around with them.
She's growing up. She likes you, Kirk, in that way.
Yeah, McCoy clarifies that Miri likes Kirk.
Kirk, you should really beyond the obvious. Stop trying to be this charming bastard and realize what you're doing. You also want to go and make sure she understands it's not going to happen.
Yeah, there's probably ways to deal with this. The first of which would be not flirting with her.
Yes.
The ship calls down calculations about the disease that they've been working on the ship's computer, and Spock can now say that the life prolongation serum or whatever it was meant to make people age about 1 month for every 100 years.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's an absurdly long lifespan.
Yes,
into the millions of years.
It's not like pure immortality, not perpetual life. But, with millions of years, you could figure out perpetual life, really.
Yeah. And while the disease killed all the adults, it may still be working in the kids who are probably, in fact, over 300 years old.
That might explain some things.
Rand gets into this weird thing about how eternal childhood filled with play and no responsibility sounds like an amazing dream. McCoy says that attached to that dream is that as soon as they enter puberty, they die.
Death.
I mean, also the fact that they would have responsibility because they still need to feed themselves and take care of each other.
Exactly. So it's sort of a this is an idea of childhood that you might have. But that's because you were in a situation where you could have a carefree childhood. Not everyone has that opportunity.
Yeah, but they kind of ignore that through the whole episode. Kirk says that he wants to help out the other children, but Spock says the children know the area too well, like mice. They're mice children.
Spock.
But Kirk still wants to try, and he drags Miri off to lead him to the other kids. We then see other children. We're about halfway through the episode at this point. We finally see the other kids they've been going on and on about.
Yes.
There's a tall redhead kid. There's a creepy kid in a skull mask. And there's a 27-year-old in an army jacket.
Yes, Tesla himself, Michael J. Pollard. I'm referencing a particular movie called The American Way with that name, by the way.
Ah, okay.
It's okay if you've never heard of it. I saw it years ago. It's pretty weird. Anyway.
Pollard is playing the leader kid named John.
I have in my notes, I called him the eldest, so if I say that, then that's who I'm referring to.
Okay. He is definitely the eldest. And
yes.
It's fine. He looks a little younger than an adult, but he still does not look like a kid.
Yes.
John is upset that Miri is with the adults, and he assumes that there are probably more adults around than they see because they're talking to each other with little boxes.
It's like these adults with their cell phones these days. Gee whiz.
I know. They spend all their time on their little talkie boxes. They all talk about the before time, not in the long, long ago. But this kind of language, I think, is where they got the stuff for Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome.
A little bit. Sort of like, well, how do kids that are in the feral conditions, how do they talk when they've had some exposure to language, enough that you can understand what they're saying, but they're get things weird? I know, let's check out this one episode of Star Trek and see what they did.
Yeah, I guess I have some stuff to mention with that later on, too, but this is just stupid. This is just stupid. This is stupidness happening with stupid, but written by stupid for more stupid.
Yes.
They mention the before times when the Grups did that hurting and killing and stuff. And the kids say that they won't see them because they can hide, and they all start chanting "Ollie Ollie Oxen Free." But John yells that this is not a game, and don't they understand that the Grups are dangerous?
No.
Kirk and Miri approach the kids' base in a toy store, apparently. I kind of missed it was a toy store. It's nice and subtle. That's not bad.
Oh, I missed that too. So
yeah. If you pay attention, it kind of looks like an old FAO Schwartz.
I guess that would kind of make sense. But where would you like to hang out after the apocalypse?
I don't know. I mean, is that song still going? The FAO Schwartz song? Because that would drive you insane after the apocalypse.
Oh, that's right. Never mind that.
FAO Schwartz was an old department store that shut down years before Toys R Us. So now there's no toy stores left in America. This is a lesson for younger people.
So we're not allowed to have toys anymore.
Yep. No one's allowed to have toys. Kirk and Miri approach, but all of the kids hide. And when Kirk enters, a girl mutant appears and starts attacking Kirk, and all the kids run and scream.
Oh no!
Kirk shoots her, and she dies. But Kirk's surprised by this because apparently his phaser was set to stun.
But still, Kirk, you killed someone.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Miri says the girl was named Louise, and she was just a little older than Miri herself is. We cut to Miri sharpening pencils for some unexplained reason.
You got to take notes when you're doing, cutting-edge scientific research using a mix of 1960s and 2260s technology.
I guess. They never use the pencils at all.
Maybe it's busy work. It's like, do something. Sharpen these.
It sounds like it. It kind of seems like busy work the way they're framing it, which is a little crummy. The ship calls down more calculations on the disease, and Spock has found an old notebook by one of the researchers that kind of tells them about how long they have before they go mad and die.
Oh, that's useful.
They don't really say at this point. They just start talking about how now they know how long they have. Kirk asks about Miri, and Spock says that according to the notes, entering puberty does give them the illness, and she probably only has a few weeks left to live. Along with that, even though Spock will not get sick, he is a disease carrier, so he can't return to the ship without also starting to spread the infection.
Which, if Spock wants to be a dick, that's, an option, but,
Kirk starts asking if there's any possibility that Spock's calculations are wrong and maybe they have longer than he thinks left, which don't question Spock on calculations. That's just silly. Just at that point, the ship calls down and confirms that they only have 7 days left to live.
In 7 days, woo!
Captain's log, day 2, they've made no progress. But the second the captain log ends, McCoy yells, "I found it!"
I found it! Do you want an addendum to your log? No, it's fine.
Yep.
Let's go.
Apparently what he found is notes on how the doctors were making a series of viruses that would have a net effect of prolonging the human lifespan if it had not all gone horribly, horribly wrong.
Basically, I described this in my notes as the Mr. Burns plan. Remember that bit of The Simpsons?
Yes, you have every disease ever. The Three Stooges syndrome.
So they're trying to force their way through this door that is your body, and then none of them can get through.
Now, Kirk says that all they have to do now is recreate the virus and they'll be able to make a vaccine, which is not going to help them because that's not how vaccines work.
Nope. It's like, well, it would save the crew if we beamed up to get more help, I guess.
Yeah, I will ignore that. They're using the wrong word. It's just funny to me.
What you're looking for is a cure, like an antibody or something like that. Yeah.
They hear all the kids nya-nyaing outside, and everyone runs outside.
Oh no, the children! We need to go look at them.
Yeah, we need to go look at the kids making noises. But it was a trick. Oh my god.
Oh no, who could have imagined?
Yeah. John sneaks into the lab when the crew has run out, and he takes all of their communicators so that they will have no way to talk to the ship.
Oh, this is what I was referencing in the opening. Baby boomers stealing their cell phones.
Yeah. It's
like your kids aren't allowed to to talk to your friends anymore on your spaceship. You listen to your elders.
McCoy says without the computers, they don't stand a chance. These kids just addicted to their phones. Captain's log, we found the food supply. It's almost gone, and the kids are going to starve to death in a few months. It's another thing that's going to kill everyone on the planet.
It just seems like a bad place,
Yep.
And 3 days to go, and for us, a few months for them. Everyone's screwed, but at least I'll be dead first.
They all still have the disease, and it's making their tempers grow short. And sure enough, Kirk and McCoy are yelling at each other a tiny bit more than they normally do in other episodes.
Yep. They're out of patience, slightly.
Kirk bumps into Rand, who then starts yelling a lot and runs out of the room.
Rand, calm down.
In the hall, Rand dramatically reveals that she's sick by tearing part of her shirt down and showing that she has a sore. But I'm pretty sure we knew she was sick. So they've been saying everyone is sick.
Yeah, we already know this, Rand. Why are you making it such a dramatic reveal here?
She has this really horrible, cringy line about how back on the ship she used to try to get the captain to notice her legs. But now she asks them to look at her legs, and they're covered in the horrible sores from the illness.
So we already have established that Rand sort of has a very unfortunate position in the crew of the Enterprise, in that she's kind of the one that gets abused more often than others.
Yep.
And this is kind of weird in that context, because it's sort of like, okay, this is very much one of those sort of abusive relationship sort of things where you're trying to both appeal to your abusers and also not, clearly not having a good time. But now, because you're under the effects of the disease, it's getting all weird.
And she has this whole "I've been trying to get you to notice me" thing, even though it's an incredibly inappropriate relationship.
Yep.
Her entire thing supposedly is supposed to be that she has a crush on Kirk, but it only comes up in these like really cringy ways.
Yes.
It's not really, I don't know. Like most things in this show, it is not really written well.
Nope.
Kirk hugs her to comfort her, and Miri gets all sad.
She was looking on.
Yeah.
Jealousy.
McCoy calls to say that he has finally found something. It's the disease, and now all they have to do is find the cure.
Excellent. We're
It's
gonna
a
live.
race now. Miri reports back to the other children, and she wants to kidnap Rand.
Gotta steal Rand away so, Kirk can be all on her own.
This is how kids act, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
She says that if they kidnap Rand, the adults will be trying to find her, and so won't have time to finish their thingy. John says that missing one person won't really slow them down that much, but she says that the captain will also look for Rand because he's Mr. Lovey-Dovey, and this seems to upset the tall redhead kid who yells "Lovey-Dovey bonk bonk" on the head.
Yeah, I note him as a loudmouth because of this sort of stuff.
He's credited as redheaded child.
As a redhead, I'm going to have to disagree with this characterization.
You don't bonk bonk?
No.
All the children start chanting bonk bonk, and dramatic music plays with a bunch of kids chanting bonk.
This is, I don't know, is this like a reference to Lord of the Flies or something?
I don't know. I have that in my notes somewhere, so maybe. Spock and McCoy are staring at a vial of cure, but McCoy says that they don't know what the dosage is.
Good? Is it bad? Is this too much? Is this not enough? We don't know!
No one knows. We need the computer for it, apparently. Kirk asks Miri where Rand is. I feel like we missed a bit.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, Rand's gone.
It's like okay, Rand's not here. Was no one paying attention to her? Well, she was acting weird earlier, so I decided to just sort of ignore her, I guess.
Yep,
Maybe,
and now who knows where she got to? Where does Rand even go?
Well, I think I've said before, run, yeoman, run, or something along those lines.
Maybe she finally did.
She's like, maybe this is all nuts. Maybe I should just get out of here. And so she decided, screw these guys, I'm out.
Now, Miri seems weirdly confused that Kirk's not feeling well. Just showing how dumb these kids are, I guess.
Or she's just a really bad liar or something.
Kirk starts going on about how he wants to find Rand, but McCoy and Spock say that they just need to find the dang communicators so that the ship's computer can tell them whether or not the vaccine is safe or a beaker full of death.
Yeah, so it's sort of one of those moral calculations, which always suck, but you kind of have to beg the questions, okay, which one's more important? Saving everyone we know is still around, or maybe saving Rand, who might just be like out to go to the bathroom or something like that.
Yeah, also, I don't know what the stakes are supposed to be here, because what have the children done that demonstrate they are capable of hurting or killing someone?
Not much, really.
As far as we know, even if she is kidnapped, it's probably a little more important to cure everyone first.
Yes.
Kirk tells Miri that if she doesn't help them, everyone's going to die. She's going to die, the kids are going to die, just everyone's going to die. He starts grabbing her and creepily yelling that she's becoming a young woman and that she's going to die when she gets older because everyone who gets older dies. And she just won't believe him until he grabs her arm and shows her that she's got a sore, just like everybody else has got the disease.
Oh no, she is infected as well. Who would have thought?
That seems like a much better way to start your argument. It's like, you're going to die from the disease. No, I'm not. You've got the early symptoms. Oh, shit. Not like, you're becoming older. Don't you see how everyone who becomes older gets the disease?
Maybe Kirk just wasn't that observant and just only then noticed, like, oh, hey, I could use this.
We cut to the kids who are playing a game, apparently.
Yeah.
Where one of the kids is pretending to be a teacher. John complains that he's not doing it right and says, what would a teacher say? And the kid says, study, 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 or bonk, bonk. And all the kids start applauding.
So I guess this is kind of, a 60s style schoolhouse here.
Yep.
Corporal punishment and all that.
They show Rand tied up in the corner, but then Miri enters with Kirk. John is angry, and all the kids start randomly chanting stuff to interrupt Kirk so that they won't have to listen to him talking. Kirk starts asking for the communicators back, and they all yell, blah, 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 blah. And Kirk yells, no, blah, blah, blah.
No, blah, blah, blah. No, blah, blah, blah. By the way, I have several times in this section in my notes here, the phrase, it's very annoying.
Oh, I don't know. The episode is just, they should have just called it that. Star Trek, it's very annoying. Kirk yells that they're all going to die. They're not, listening to him, and they send a kid in from behind to attack him, but he easily disarms him because it's a child.
Yes. Oh no, this person, like a quarter of my weight, is attacking me in a very futile manner.
Yeah. But then all of the kids, like 20, 30 kids, swarm him and all start hitting him with stuff, yelling bonk bonk, which is their favorite phrase, apparently.
Yes.
But Kirk just kind of walks out, and they all stop.
Yeah, so this is there's sort of one of those thought questions from way back in the day of, all right, so you're a situation where you are confronted with a fight to the death between you and an endless stream of like 5-year-olds. How long will you survive? Sort of situation. Obviously, Kirk's number is at least more than 15.
They'd stop attacking immediately. They just get bored and stop. So it's not really a fight. They just run in and hit him a little bit, and then he gets up and they stop hitting him.
It's a low-level beatdown.
Yep. They won't listen to him until Kirk double dares them to look at the blood on their hands and tells them that they're all becoming into the horrible grown-up attacky monsters that they're afraid of.
Oh no, we were the monsters the whole time.
Yeah. They cut away before we can see whether this is a working argument. We go to Spock and McCoy, who are still arguing about whether or not to try the vaccine. Spock says that the bickering is pointless and seems agitated, even though he shouldn't be being affected by the disease.
Spock's still kind of a jerk, so.
That's true. Spock leaves to check on the captain, and when he does, McCoy injects himself with the vaccine anyway, which just makes him fall over in pain.
He rolls up his sleeves, injects, twitches and falls over, screams. Spock comes running back in with Red Shirt Man, and McCoy's on the ground. In bad shape,
my God.
Unconscious. Is he dead? Has he expired? Is our doctor our best hope for solving this horrible disease crisis? Has it come to an end? Are we all doomed?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Kirk enters with all of the children and a communicator reporting that they only have 3 hours left till they die.
Yeah.
They see
they're all doomed then, right?
McCoy on the floor, and McCoy's sores start to fade away with magic.
Yes, special effects happen.
He was cured after all.
Now the question is he's going to live?
Well, I guess not, because we just cut to the bridge.
Yeah.
On the bridge, Rand is concerned that they left all the kids there.
Yep. Yeah, they're just children, that they're all just leaving them.
Then all of a sudden, Kirk's like, yeah, it's fine, they're 300 years old. It's not like we thought they were capable before, but now we do.
And, there's some lines about, like, sending in ships to get them picked up or something.
He contacted Space Central, which is a new thing we've not heard of before. Apparently, that's their organization.
Yeah, that's who their organization, that's who they answer to. That's who giving them the orders to go out and explore. all that fun stuff. So the Space Central, we're going to be, hearing this name often and frequently for many years to come, right?
Yeah, I'm sure this isn't the only time they ever mention it. Completely. That Space Central is going to send teachers and advisors to the planet, so I guess it's fine.
Yeah, and hopefully like food.
Rand says that Miri loved Kirk, but then Kirk says that he doesn't get involved with older women, and we all have a great laugh about how he was flirting with a preteen.
Oh, man.
That's not a cute line when you've been actively flirting with her the entire frickin' episode.
Including before you knew she was 300 years old, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
The end.
What factor 1? Engage.
Yep.
Oh, sort of.
Hooray.
Hooray, it's
Hooray.
over.
The very first thing that I wrote in my notes for this episode is this is Lord of the Flies on stupid.
Yep. So, if people aren't familiar with Lord of the Flies, the basic idea is that there's like a plane crash or something like that, and a bunch of young students, like, preteens to early teens, all boys, I think, right?
Yeah, all boys.
Are stranded on a desert island, and the story sort of follows the adventures of them trying to make it, try to get food, trying to survive, and eventually having a total sociological breakdown with murder and things.
Yeah. So it's a book by William Golding, just to credit, and apparently he really prescribed to this war-inspired viewpoint from World War II, where he believed that people were just so inherently evil that even a slight breakdown in social order would lead us to all become horrible, savage beast people that would just, run around randomly killing each other.
We're all really, animals just barely held in check by the society around us sort of school of thought.
Yeah, which is the Hobbesian model that we've referenced a few. It was in one of our earlier episodes, that the Hobbesian model of the state of nature, where brutish, violent, short, etc., where society and strong leaders are what keep our horrible, brutish natures in check.
Which I have some disagreements with, but I've already mentioned those too.
Yeah, but we also don't get that in this episode.
Nope.
The kids are just dumb.
Yeah, it's okay. You got the situation where these children, who apparently have been alive for 300 years, who should have experience and maybe have had the opportunity to build society and, effectively grow up, at least mentally, who are still acting like children.
Yeah.
That have just been abandoned a few months ago. It's really weird.
Let me just maybe get this out of the way, because, I hit this thing where the way these episodes are written, they usually have, the characters doing big speeches that I think are supposed to be laying out what they believe the themes of the episode are.
Yes.
But then those themes are horribly undermined by everything else that happens in the episode.
It's, we got sort of, I guess, two arguments going on, and one of them is not being made real well, the other one's being undermined by that other one.
Yeah. So, based on what the characters say, I think you're getting into sort of the good old Hobbes versus Rousseau argument.
Mm-hmm.
Which we haven't talked a lot about Rousseau except in opposition to Hobbes, which is kind of the only way you ever hear their names.
No.
Rousseau had kind of the opposite view of the state of nature, that in a state of nature, humans would be living perfect, idealized lives. And it is society's corrupting influence on us that precipitates all of the evil in the world.
The evil is, in effect, a learned behavior sort of situation in that case.
Yeah, it's more so that, you were trying to impress the people around you and one-up each other, because you all live in a close society instead of living out in nature where you can just, survive and be good and flower children-y.
We have acquired this notion that to, benefits our standing in the society or to, appease its rules, that we need to do these horrible things in order to, accomplish those goals. But without that sort of influence, we'd be able to sort of revert to a more pure and, well-behaved fashion.
Yeah, he also wrote a great deal about the inherent innocence of children, which I think may have some relevance here, and that kind of the main job that you have in raising children is to protect them from the corrupting influences around them.
to think of the children occasionally.
Yes. So I think that what they're going for in this episode, the way that Rand and some other people kind of describe the way the children are, not how we see the children, but the way they are described, is that they have this idyllic life of play and, carefree running around as children with no adults to enforce order or ruin their fun, and they can just exist as kids. It's kind of a Peter Pan Neverland scenario.
I mean, yeah. Oh, I didn't think about Peter Pan when I was thinking about this episode. Oh, good point.
And then every other character brings up this thing of, like, it may seem idyllic, but what if you die as soon as you're done being a child? Oh my God, wouldn't that make it horrible?
Well, you're still living for centuries, first toss, so it's
Yeah.
maybe not so bad. Second, okay, then that's just sort of how your life cycle works here. All right.
And then also they sort of have this thing of children instinctively need adults to tell them right from wrong, and the fact that they don't have this happening is like some sort of huge detriment to their lives.
We've already just talked about that a little bit, but it's still sort of, you're not really grounding this other than you're just asserting it.
Yeah, I think they keep saying, it seems like they're trying to do you think being a child forever would be idyllic, but what if it's not? Mm-hmm. Oh my God. But that's not what they're actually showing in the rest of the episode.
Yeah, the rest of the episode is other things sort of being focused on. And heck, I could make an argument that these children have sort of created their own society that replaced the adult society of the world, and it's kind of ridiculous and bonkers, and is apparently all about harassment and synchronized chanting and some sort of groupthink sort of situation. Oh no, or I don't know.
Yeah, and once again they kind of undermine their point with their premise, because they keep going on about how horrible it is that the kids are going to die as soon as they enter adolescence. But they laid out specifically that the way their aging process works is a month for 100 years. Yep, which means the kids who are entering adolescence now were 3 months away when this plague hit.
Yes.
So the younger children, the littler kids on this planet, are going to live for millions of years.
Correct. They are going to see the rise and fall of entire civilizations. They're going to see stars go nova. They're going to see continents move across planets. They're going to be okay.
And I think maybe partway through they realized their mistake, which is why they threw in the thing about how they're running out of food.
It's like, we need some other urgent reason to panic about the kids here.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. They didn't really go into how the children have been avoiding responsibility for this long.
Yeah.
Because everyone else died. They've formed their own little society. And also, who knows how many kids are on this planet? They're in this one town.
Yeah, this is like one town. It looks not like a huge town either. So, at most maybe like a few 100,000 people before, the plague came through. So it would sort of suggest that, there is millions upon millions of children on this world that are out there who are going to live for millions of years, and we're only seeing a small fraction of them.
Yeah, and you're telling me they chose to have this, idyllic kid life where they didn't have any responsibility or something, instead of one of them setting up a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, one of the arguments that Kirk uses to try to persuade the kids to help them is that when all the older kids die, there's going to be no one left to take care of the younger kids, which means they're taking care of the younger kids, which means they have parental responsibilities, which is also something that young children take on in the real world now.
Yeah, there is, this, thing in homes that have, say, only one parent, or there's a sickly parent, or there's, a parent has to work too much, where an older sibling will maybe take responsibility over the younger siblings and sort of be that parental figure, even though they themselves might not even be 10.
Yeah, it's not even particularly uncommon, even in the United States, but also in other countries where maybe more people in the family have to work. There's less, there's less infrastructural development, and children do have to take on more responsibilities earlier. the idea that kids who have adults removed would suddenly just play all the time and avoid responsibility completely is a very weird viewpoint on children.
And I think this might be a good point for me to bring up a particular episode of Stargate SG-1.
Stargate! I was going to bring up one of those too. I wonder if it's the same one.
So there's an episode of Stargate SG-1. I wasn't able to track down the exact name before we started recording, where the Stargate crew, the SG-1 group, goes to this planet, and they find that the children of this planet are like all the people doing the research, all the science, all the intellectual heavy lifting, because the people of that planet determined that people, children under a certain age were able to learn so much faster and absorb this knowledge. So they were basically given the knowledge of everyone who had come before them at an early age, and then allowed to sort of go build off that. To it's like, well, I now know everything about quantum physics, so I'm going to start researching quantum physics, even though I'm only 3 years old.
Oh, yeah. That was such a great episode, actually.
Yeah.
We shouldn't go too much into the details of the thing, but I think that episode has one of the best depictions of modern mental health care in science fiction.
Yeah, and there's some stuff, we don't want to spoil here, but, there's some consequences to this that are maybe not so good. But the point is that, yeah, this is true. Children of young age are able to learn very quickly. And if these children are, their lives are being slowed down, then they're basically letting their minds be, left in this overdrive learning state for years and years and years. So you would think that they should be able to learn and grow well beyond the depictions that are sort of being, driven in this episode. But they, I guess, didn't really quite realize that at the time, so they weren't able to sort of conceive of this being a possibility.
Yeah, I wasn't able really to find much on child psychology at this time. This was during the prevalence of Dr. Spock, who was one of the early figures to say, be nice to children.
Yes. You don't need to, just hit them, guys. Come on. They're like people. Treat them like such.
The capacity for children learning has been something we've known about for ages, because children pick up on languages very, very quickly and learn other things incredibly quickly. And just
I guess to be into they didn't quite realize that it wasn't quite internalized that language was a really hard thing to sort of pick up on. Sort of like, oh yeah, just whatever. It's nothing. Really learning is how to build a car.
Yeah.
Right?
I still posit that, these kids seem to have gotten dumber.
Yeah.
Something that I didn't quite realize, because I admit, coming up in the 80s and 90s, I didn't have the greatest, cemented timeline of when earlier TV shows kind of aired. Yep. So, I grew up, I watched, reruns of the Flintstones and things, but I didn't really have a good conception of when in American history that show was from. So I looked it up when I was looking at this episode, and Star Trek and the Flintstones ran at the same time, which means you had Bam Bam on the Flintstones, and all these kids yelling bonk bonk while they smack things repeatedly.
So Loudmouth is secretly Bam Bam?
Yes.
In the future?
Should have just called him bonk bonk.
Good point.
This weird... They have normal language. They can translate. It's not like language has changed in the 300 years they've been speaking it. They're just using stupid language for no reason.
Maybe they're all going senile.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, okay, your brain has been filled with all this information, and maybe at some point they did have a flourishing society, with farms and production and a means to perpetuate them, their living. But then a century later, it's like, well, my brain's gone all now. I'm going to call grown-ups grumps now, and I'm going to slowly sort of let's revert to our, I guess, worst instincts and just sort of be spazzes now.
I feel like if you have to make up that big of a stretch to get their episode to make sense,
then it might be too much of a stretch.
This is the weird thing to me. is like the 1960s, they had kids working.
Yeah.
Children this age were doing things, especially in more rural communities. Like, this doesn't look like a big town. It was probably surrounded by farms.
Mm-hmm.
You would think there would be a lot of kids who were raised on farms and worked farms.
Yeah. And even growing up, I technically lived in, quote, a suburb, but it was one of those suburbs where, like, half the kids in the school, grew up on farms, lived on farms, sort of like outer edge of a metro area sort of situation.
And whatever the space 60s version of a 4-H club is.
Yeah. Where is that?
You also, I noticed a extreme lack of life forms on this planet. You never see a thing that's not just a human child running around. There's no plants. There's no stray animals. There's nothing.
It's children, broken down buildings, and tricycles. That's it.
I mean, if anything, it does just go into the kind of dictatorial, weirdly fascisty way that this show portrays order in society. Like, Kirk has to be the unquestioning one in charge, never question him, no matter what happens. He can be sick and dying and making orders that make absolutely no sense, but he has to be the captain. And now, even with the kids around, it's like, well, they need an unquestioning super adult to, like, tell them what to do.
Need that father figure from Charlie X to come in and try not to be as weird this time.
Yeah, that worked out so well.
Oh God, he's still hitting on Miri. Oh no.
Yeah. Kirk is such an amazing parent figure. We just have to keep on bringing him up again and again and again.
And your supreme leader, daddy figure, has to be the one in charge, speeching at the children who have lost their minds or something like that, and is enforcing his will upon them in order to get things done, even though we might have a cure already. You just needed to wait around for it.
And speaking of more plot hole things, the whole disease aspect kind of had a very similar don't play God thing that we've gotten in some other episodes.
Yes.
Like, don't try to expand your lifespan or it's going to go bad.
Yeah, this, I actually kind of want to sort of delve in this specifically a little bit more about the morality of immortality. You up for this?
Yeah, it rhymes.
All right. So, this isn't specifically about, the forms of immortality or what it could, possibly, means like, oh, I'm now, a million years old. Well, how does that make you feel exactly? Though that is a part of it. I sort of broke it down into sort of three sort of subcategories. Is it moral, for each one of these and sort of situation. Anyway, so first off, is it a good idea to be immortal for yourself? So there's questions about, people argue it's like, okay, if you live forever, then you're not going to be motivated to do anything. You're not going to be able to be motivated to experience things. To that, I have to sort of disagree, because there's sort of this notion that young people feel like they are going to live forever already, and they still do things.
Well, a little, but I think this gets into this weird kind of motivation question, which is kind of a bigger thing. I just finished reading this great book called it's called Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn, who is he does a lot of work in childhood education stuff. He's fairly well known. He has some supposedly radical viewpoints. But he has the entire thing between like intrinsic and extrinsic motivations based on the way that we do our system now is very, very based on rewards and punishments, which would be extrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
And that kind of idea of, if you don't know you have a limited amount of time, you won't try to do more things, is kind of based on a weird artificial enforced limitation on the things you can do.
Yeah.
So the kind of idea with it is your motivation for doing something now is that if you don't, you will later be punished by not having been able to do it. Like, you will run out of time to do this thing. So not doing it now will incur a later punishment.
Indeed.
That whole thing misses out on the intrinsic motivation of like, if you
Exactly.
enjoy doing something, if you find something interesting and gain some sort of, not always complete enjoyment, like that word makes people think of like, well, you will only do things that are fun. But
Some
gaining,
sort of personal benefit.
yeah, gaining not even just a like concrete personal benefit, but like a sense of worth. Just like people have kind of an innate need to do things that either better yourself or society. A person who does not do anything, like people have this idea, like if you take away, if you gave people all the time in the world, they would like never do anything, or if you took away people needing to like get money and stuff, they would not do stuff. Misses the idea that sitting around and doing nothing is called depression.
Yes. And that kind of sucks. It's a state of affairs that I don't think I've ever met someone who wanted to be in that state of affairs.
Yeah. Anyone who has ever even had low-level depression will tell you that it is horrible.
Yeah, it's a state of affairs to be avoided. So that is a internal motivation on its own that would keep people doing things, just in general, even without these external factors.
Yeah, and not only that, but it is not like there's so many different kinds of depression. We don't have time to go into all of it, but like not doing stuff, sitting in a room and not doing something. One, it's incredibly difficult, but also doing that for a prolonged period of time will cause depression.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like depressed people don't do things. People who don't do things become depressed.
Yes.
So the idea that you would not like do stuff because you had an unlimited lifespan is fairly ridiculous.
Yes. So I reject that knock against it right out. But it does lead to the next possible problem, the long-term effects of eternal boredom. That what if you have done everything? What then? Do you just try to persist? Do you try to redo things, see if it's different? And what if you do that a number of times and realize, oh, I'm just getting really bored with all these things I used to enjoy? And that could potentially lead to depression as well, because now it's effectively like doing nothing because you're not getting anything out of it anymore.
I see this as a fairly materialistic argument.
Yeah, and it also right out rejects the possibility of forgetting, the power to find something good in something you've done before because it has been so long. It's like I don't remember every little detail about it, but I'm going to give it another go and see if I can still get enjoyment. Oh, because I have forgotten aspects. I'm able to do this. This is why I played like Deus Ex Human Revolution like 5 times now.
Yeah, and there's also, you brought up art with like the video game thing.
Yeah.
But there's this thing, like I just finished watching through BoJack Horseman on Netflix for the 5th time.
Yeah.
Because not only did I forget bits and pieces, but it's also such a deeply layered piece of art that you have to view it multiple times in order to understand all of it.
Yes. It's impossible to know that you really have done everything. You have completed things. You've gotten to the deepest depths you can on all the things you find yourself enjoying. But more, there is the possibility, the long term, of encountering new things in your life. Things you did not conceive of when you were only a few thousand years old. Who knows what the distant future may bring to us?
Yeah. You could also posit this idea that I kind of like thinking about. The evolution of human society, especially if you look at language and art, is an exercise in trying to communicate your internal experience to others.
Which is a little hard to do.
Yeah, and also we keep coming up with new and different and varied ways to do it. And it's also an innately enjoyable thing to do. Even people who do not consider themselves artists usually have an art form that they enjoy making, even if they may not consider themselves to be that good at doing it.
I know plenty of people who you create visual arts, musical arts, and I do the writing stuff. It's there is many aspects. People build sculptures, and I sort of made a little jab at like people making being learning things and building cars, but that is an art form in and of itself. It's sort of you learn these pieces, you craft them together, and sure, a lot of people, it's all about the job, but there are people who build cars because they enjoy it. They want to. It's like, I want to build this with my own hands. I want to craft something, even if I'm going by the plan, or alternatively, I'm building my own special custom-made vehicle. And either one of these is a totally valid means of expression.
Yeah, even if you get completely away from things that you build and make, humans have been having discussions on things like morality and the nature of the universe for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And
we still haven't got a good answer.
Yeah, and you could consider that to be one through line, because most of these philosophies are based on things that were happening in ancient Greece that were just written down and carried forward. It wasn't the same person working on them, but there's still been a productive through line for thousands of years, and that conversation has not gotten old.
Yeah.
This topic was kind of handled fairly well, in my opinion, through a Star Trek Voyager episode.
Voyager?
I don't know the exact name of. It was one of the Q episodes.
Oh, yeah. The episode with Quinn, right?
Yes. They find a Q in Q prison, who has been imprisoned by the other Q because he wants to kill himself.
Yes, and they cannot have this. This is forbidden.
Yeah, but aside from discussions on whether or not taking your own life is something that we consider morally okay, the reasoning that he has for this is because he is an immortal, timeless being. He has done everything in life, which kind of gets to the similar argument, except in this case, he's also has super god powers, so he can do absolutely everything ever.
So okay, I've lived through the universe 100 bazillion times entirely, and have seen and done everything. Literally, I've seen and done everything.
Yeah, I consider
what now?
the boredom idea to be a little weird, because I always kind of, if I had the possibility, I would probably like to live longer than a normal human lifespan, just because I want to see how things turn out.
Yeah.
So the idea that you would just get bored of doing stuff is also a little odd. It kind of speaks to this materialistic idea where you just have to keep getting new things and experiencing new things, and it's also a very Western idea.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of more what we would call Eastern traditions. I find the whole East-West wordage a little awkward, but for clarity's sake, there are a lot of Eastern traditions where you spend your entire life trying to utterly master a single skill, which is something that you will probably never 100% perfect. So you could spend hundreds of years doing that.
The not just expertise, not just extreme skill, but perfection.
Yeah, and a meditation on perfection and the inachievability of it.
It's like, yes, we pursue this, but we do know that it is technically impossible to get there. But that doesn't mean we don't give up. We still attempt.
This also kind of gets to this other thing that recently I've been hearing. I also have a problem with this argument, I'll just say first off, but there's been kind of this argument of how great boredom is. Ever since the ubiquity of cell phones and social media and the ease in which we can get entertainment, there's been kind of a discussion of how, but what if kids need to be bored more often to foster creativity and things? So, even being a bit bored could be fine.
I guess it's good if that boredom is because you need to rest. Because all the madness of the world is driving me crazy, so I need to disconnect for a little while and just sort of let myself be, so I can calm down. I can sort of rebuild myself, and just sort of let the wear and tear that I'm getting internally and externally sort of heal a bit. But once you get through that, then you start getting into that. Well, I'm bored now, and I want to do things.
Yeah, but you see, that wouldn't really be boredom. Because boredom at its core is inherently an unpleasant experience.
Yeah. Disconnecting and taking a break. No, that's not boredom. That's that's taking a break.
Yeah. I have some problems with the kind of bad psychology of this argument of the constant entertainment is ruining children's creativity, But, so, yeah, I guess the shorter answer would be I don't think that you would become bored of life.
Yeah. Neither do I. So for this first question of immortality, I don't think that there is, I don't think it would be immoral myself. There's the second question of immortality. Is it good for society, the greater world? And this one is maybe a little bit more tricky, because it does sort of call into questions the problems of resource limitations, and sort of the, quote, overpopulation problem. If you make everybody immortal and they still keep having babies, suddenly we have 100 trillion people on Earth, and you're suddenly filling up the entire world and no one has any food to eat, which is very much a kind of ridiculous argument on a number of fronts. First off, I'd like to point out straight up that, as is in our current world of 7 point whatever billion people, that we do have the resources and the capability to feed everybody. So overpopulation is not an issue now. And we do have the capability to advance both our technology and our ability to cultivate resources to, live in a world where we are, able to feed everybody and also not destroying ourselves in the process. So I want to sort of put that out there, because there's a lot of sort of arguments that are like, oh, well, there's too many people, we need like Thanos it or something like that. That's just kind of like, what? No.
Yeah, that's kind of a crummy argument.
Yeah, that's you have a thing you want to do because you don't like people, and you're trying to justify it through really kind of scummy means. Go away.
Well, you kind of get into this. This is like a similar thing that I was talking about with the robots. Mm-hmm. The way that you always have like, well, androids rose up and destroyed us, and we just created them to work. It's like, well, you created them to work badly.
Yeah.
So
you failed at being a creator.
This is the same thing. If you introduce immortality into a society, and then you keep allowing that society to propagate itself at an uncontrollable rate, you did it badly.
Yep.
You also have an interesting question of, would people feel as much need societally to continue having children?
Yeah. It's sort of one of those things that, there's a notion that, it's like, well, I'm going to die someday, but, maybe if I have some grandkids, it'll be all right, But if you're not going to die, then who cares?
There's a decent amount of like wanting to pass something on to the next generation, but if you are still going to be here, I'm not saying no one would ever want to have children, but you probably might see a slight fall in it. We even see it now. Like the more technologically advanced a society becomes, the fewer children they tend to have.
Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I have access to birth control for one. I understand the responsibilities and consequences of having children, both for myself and the people around me. And, I also have other things that I would like to be rather focusing on than raising a family, because these are the things I value. As opposed to, this is the only thing I can do.
I also know quite a few people who, like, people my age in their, like, 30s, who kind of have this thing of, like, I am not sure if I really want kids right now, but I don't never want kids, and I'm kind of running out of that time window when you can have them.
Yeah.
So depending on how the immortality, functions,
mm-hmm.
you might not, have as many people rushing into families. It might be it would probably be a much more, like, considered.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we're in our 20s for, 100 bazillion years. So that means we could start that family in the year 5 million. And that's fine.
And I'm guessing that, any kind of immortality where you continue to age is just silly. So.
Yes. Which does sort of bring up the other, thing I wanted to sort of mention on this particular bit, that would a society made of a people that are, thousands or millions of years old be a society that is, I guess, quote, nimble enough to be able to adapt to change? Because if you have it sort of in the, people are still aging, and sort of the notion that folks sort of get set in their ways as they get older, which I think is more of a thing that happens when you're much younger, but people don't like to think about it. You got then you might have a situation where you got an open and free society that suddenly has this new dilemma, but everyone's so set in their ways they're unwilling to ever consider any worthwhile action to try to fix the situation.
Yeah, that was one of my first thoughts, but I suppose that only works if everyone is relatively comfortable.
Yeah.
And if you had an event that actually, so I might even argue that it would make people less likely to not address changes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things
that's what
that
my thinking is too.
get into now is this idea that you have so much trouble thinking ahead that you maybe don't want to enact changes that aren't going to take effect during your lifespan, which would kind of get removed if you had an unlimited lifespan.
Yes, it's like, wait, I actually have to care about global warming because it will affect me too? Uh-oh.
It would get rid of evolutionary change, for sure.
Yes.
But the way that societies are structured, you do have a strong distinction between evolutionary change and societal evolution.
Yes. So you're basically moving our evolution from the biological to the to the mental, in a way, not like mental powers, but like sociological, in our individual evolutions as well.
Yeah, I don't think that people would necessarily stop doing things. I think any kind of slowdown you might see when people get older is, one, cultural, and two, wouldn't happen as much if you knew you still had another several thousand years to live.
Yeah. So, do we got an answer on this question?
Maybe.
Or...
I mean, you kind of had a thing of is it good for society? And I think you then have to define what is good for society.
That's a very good question.
Is a static society necessarily bad if everyone in the society is relatively happy?
Yeah. I've thought about writing a story sort of on this particular front. That's sort of an idealized world where everyone is immortal and everyone's sort of been doing their own thing for millions of years, and the concept of time is kind of irrelevant. And someone realizes, is this good or bad? Let's investigate this. I haven't actually written the story, but it's something I've been thinking about writing for a while. I guess maybe another sort of thing to sort of bounce back to that resource limitations in a way is some other bits of writing I've done where there's characters with clinical immortality, but do in a fashion age, but they don't just grow older. They don't age as in they're going to get gray hairs and have their bodies break down. They age as in they're still growing physically. So over thousands and millions of years, they actually physically get bigger at a slowly decreasing rate. But they still get to a point where if they live 100 million years, they could be the size of a continent, sort of thing, if their body is physically able to function at that point. And it's sort of a it's like, well, after you get past a certain size, is it moral to be demanding that you extract personally this much resources from the world in order for your own continuation at the expense of people that maybe don't have this advantage or are much younger and thus much smaller?
Sounds like somebody's getting into an allegory for how much more difficult it becomes to keep people alive medically as they age.
Dun, dun, dun! So it's sort of one of those things to sort of consider in that situation, but that doesn't really apply to just sort of a base level immortality where that's not the problem. And by the way, the solution I had was basically a form of cryogenic freezing. It's like, well, I know I'm going to live forever, but if I get to this far future point, the slow way where this problem might be solved is basically going to potentially hurt those around me. So I'm going to basically put myself in hibernation for a few million years and see if they figured out the problem yet. It's still a work in progress. So I guess that's sort of a thought process that's only sort of tangentially related to this question. But depending on how your immortality works, it might be relevant.
Yeah. Well, the immortality in this particular episode works in a kind of interesting way. Mm-hmm. But once again, in the way they write these things, it was completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
They never really did much to address the fact that the kids have been alive for 300 years.
It's like, well, this is just sort of a thing that's here. It's Yeah.
And if we get back to like the episode in general, the kids were actually 100% superfluous to the plot.
Yep.
Like, in fact, even the bit that they tried to add to have dramatic tension of them cutting them off from contact with the ship didn't matter because
Nope.
McCoy took the cure and was cured without ever talking to the ship about it.
Yeah, they could have just cut out the children entirely. It's like, you maybe find some evidence that, yes, there were children here that survived the initial plague, but, we only find their bodies and they've starved to death while all the adults succumb to the disease.
All they needed to do was show up to the planet 2-3 years after the plague.
Mm-hmm.
Being there 300 years later made absolutely no difference.
Yep.
This actually, like, the Stargate episode that I was thinking of with this episode was from, I believe it was season 9, when they go to a planet that Morgan Le Fay had seeded a plague on.
Oh, yes.
And they show up to this planet where everyone is dead, and then they all get the plague. And they have to work really hard to cure themselves while they're experiencing the symptoms of the plague, which is a sleeping sickness in this case.
So you gotta stay awake, man. Come on.
So they have the similar thing of we're cut off from resources. Like, we can't go back to the place where we could do the research properly and better and have manpower because we're going to infect everyone. But we're the only ones who can work on it, but also we're infected and suffering deleterious effects from that. And it's done in a much more character-centered way, which makes it interesting.
Yes.
So they could have had that. I mean, they wanted to make some kind of commentary on children that they didn't make.
Yeah. They made too many commentaries about children and none of them seem to work.
I also thought it was kind of an interesting one that this episode, I keep noticing plot similarities between this and later sci-fi things.
Mm-hmm.
This is the plot of the show Jeremiah.
Oh, yeah. Which, it was, I believe, J. Michael Straczynski was involved on that one.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so who is the guy who is behind Babylon 5. And Babylon 5, one of his rules he put down was no cute kids and robots.
What about cute robot kids? Jeremiah seems to have been a somewhat unpopular show. Canceled after 2 seasons.
I saw some of it. I seemed to enjoy it. It had some interesting stuff going on. So
yeah, I enjoyed it. For anyone who's unfamiliar, kind of the plot is very similar to this, that there was some sort of plague that wiped out anyone who was over the age of puberty. But in this case, the plague dissipated after all the adults died. So This is set about 15 to 20 years after that, when all the kids are now entering adulthood and trying to reform a functioning society.
Yes, and the adventures of the titular character and other folks as they go out in the world and run into people, and there's still tons of people around. They're just not nearly as many. And they're all sort of, people that have grown up since that plague wiped everything out. So some of them are like, well, I was like 12, so I kind of know what's going on and how to connect myself. Others like, well, I was like 4 and I was kind of abandoned. So I'm like,
Yeah, which also kind of reminded me of this thing. They don't mention explicitly in this episode because they probably wouldn't be able to in the 60s. But it's an odd choice to have the main audience interaction character be a young woman when the entire episode is about how horrible entering puberty is.
Yeah. I think there might be a relationship there.
Maybe. I mean, they also die when they enter puberty, which we talked before in the Charlie X episode about how afraid everyone was of teenagers.
Yes. It's like puberty, that's the bad time when the children become evil.
Well, they do become evil. The second that they enter puberty, they start attacking people and then die.
Yes. They get lesions all over their bodies, these strange things on their face. They just make them look horrible, and they get this attitude, and they like to lash out at people. And then these monsters are even worse.
Yeah. So it can be read in a couple of ways with like some sort of puberty coming of age allegories of like your loss of innocence, which is another dumb trope that keeps coming up around children. The like the way that your life changes when you enter puberty being not altogether great. This very stark separation that they have between being a child and being an adolescent, which they also imply is natural and unavoidable and not cultural.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of have a thing when he's talking to Miri about like, oh, have you noticed that you're not as interested in hanging out with your younger friends anymore and you don't like playing games?
What? I know people that are older than me that still enjoy playing the Pokemons.
Yeah. I had to delete Pokemon Go off my phone because I felt like it was taking too much control of my life. Like, I've been playing Pokemon since the 90s when I was in grade school.
Yeah, so this notion that there's this for sure division here is not well grounded. There is maybe some things like you're interested in things in addition to this, but a lot of this pressure to sort of abandon your the things of your childhood is a thing that sort of is I guess going back to that sort of learned sort of behavior. This idea that you have to abandon all that you were before in order to become an adult, because that's what being an adult's all about.
Yeah.
As opposed to defining it for yourself.
You hit this again and again in this show. Mm-hmm. This one's it's subtext in the episode, but the way they write subtext, it undercuts the main text so much that I feel like it's a lot more explicit than they probably mean it to be.
Yep.
But you hit this thing that was very prevalent in this time period, that the 50s organization of Western society in America is right and natural and how things have always been and always will be.
That nuclear family, forever and ever.
Yeah, the nuclear family, the coming of age and putting away your childhood sort of thing. The strong masculine role model archetype who has to be running everything all the time. This is just how nature exists, and it is right and natural and totally not a cultural influence at all.
So the 2260s kind of suck in a way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm drawing some comparisons because I've been playing a lot of Fallout recently.
Yes, which hits on this sort of trope a lot.
Yeah, but this is the interesting one. The way that they do advanced 50s society in Fallout is scary because it's all about basically a rise of a near-fascist dictatorial government state. But it's less scary to me than the way it's presented in the original Star Trek.
A little spooky.
Well, it's probably because modern Bethesda-style Fallout is written through a modern, culturally sensitive lens.
Yes.
It still doesn't do as great a job as it could, but they assume that things like interracial marriage wouldn't be as much of a problem by the time you hit the 22-somethings.
Yes.
So they have things like this. They have same-sex relationships and interracial marriages, and racism isn't really a thing anymore, even though it's still the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a much better 50s in those games than you do in Star Trek, which is supposed to be this super advanced society that has moved on with all of the great things that humanity can achieve.
Yeah, it still has all these sort of unfortunate sort of trying to be subtle but not really accomplishing it sort of discriminatory behaviors and practices and these roles that everyone's being sort of foisted into that are really not healthy for them.
Yeah.
And not healthy for everyone around them, too. I'm looking at you, Kirk.
It also, again, gets a little into the domesticity area with Miri kind of falling in line to just follow them around because she's got the crush on Kirk. And then the kind of horrible manipulative woman trope when she gets jealous and decides to orchestrate a kidnapping of her romantic rival.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a lot of horrible 50s things seeping in here.
Yes. Should we move on?
Yeah.
Star Trek move on?
Star Trek should move on. I would feel a little remiss if I didn't. I have already forgotten this from the beginning of the episode.
Huh?
This is supposed to be an alternate Earth.
Yep.
They really never mention it and never do anything with it, and I had in fact already forgot.
Yep. I was going to bring it up in my awards.
Yeah. Well, I suppose unless we have any other big things to hit on, we've already been going in the discussion for twice as long as it took to synopsis the episode. So.
Well, my final thoughts on final bit of the immortality morality question
Yes.
was, is immortality good for the universe in total? My only examples really sort of talking about the word Babylon 5.
Well, I have this thing. I was just listening to an interview on NPR this morning because I'm like a horrible East Coast New Yorker and I do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They were interviewing a astrophysicist who was talking a lot.
Is this someone I know?
I don't know. I can't remember the name, but his whole thing was kind of the exobiology.
Gleiser?
Maybe. Though I just found the name of the guy. My research assistant here found the name of the person. It's Adam Frank.
Adam Frank. Name is familiar. I see a picture of him, but I don't think I know him. So
he recently released a book, I guess. He was talking about like alien civilizations a lot, and kind of if we could learn how to conquer climate change by finding an alien civilization that had already conquered climate change, which I felt was a weird premise. It really struck me how human-centered his thinking was. And I think that you get into that kind of thing. If you have something like that, if you ask something so broad, like what is a good thing for the universe at large?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a good thing for humans in the universe? Is it a good thing for other environments in the universe? Like, is anything that we do going to affect the universe in any kind of significantly measurable way, even at all? So you kind of have to decide whether you're staying with a human orientation on things. Like they had the thing of like, if you could terraform another planet for people, wouldn't that be great? It's like, it'd be great for people. It would be horrible for that other planet.
Yeah. It
would be a massive ecological disaster.
Yes, this planet has a few bits of local bacteria, and we have to destroy them all in order for our civilization to take over. Hooray!
Yeah, so he had some stuff on like alien societies, which is just always so human-centered. It's just such a human-centered way of thinking about these things. It just reminded me of it when you say, is this a good thing for the universe at large? Like, how?
It's like, well, I guess my only sort of, two things would be the Babylon 5 sort of view of it, that, maybe having one person from the dawn of time who is around to basically let people know that they're kind of making the same mistakes again occasionally might be a good thing, just for the general well-being of all future beings that may appear in the universe. But the other thing I was sort of thinking about, it's like, okay, so if this person is able to live forever, or a whole society of people, and they are able to delve into the deepest secrets, the hidden mysteries of the cosmos, what things could we potentially uncover? What deep thoughts, what deep secrets that there be that upon discovering them might allow us to do something either good or bad for the universe, depending on what you define those things as, potentially. There's basically a whole realm of uncertainty. When you push things to the extreme limit, you go to the final edge where everything is beyond anything that we could potentially comprehend.
Yeah,
it's basically a ticket to the unknown possibility, the opportunity to potentially define what good for the universe is in total, even if that is maybe not really what we understand the question to be right now.
Yeah, well, that could get into a little more of who gets to define good.
Exactly. Is it good for the universe, or is it good for this immortal being?
Though I'm realizing, thinking ahead in our schedule a little bit here, we should leave a little bit of this and keep thinking about our views on immortality, because there's a slightly special episode I want to do in a couple of parts that's going to delve into this a lot more strenuously.
Yes, that's why I didn't want to sort of poke into certain domains here. I just wanted to sort of bring up the because the part of the episode here was about people were trying to do this, and well, it kind of went the opposite direction they wanted it to.
Yes.
And so there's it's like, what has science done sort of questions.
Yeah,
or
this really
situation.
gets into the, have we overstepped where we should be poking our science fingers into? Have we found the universal, power socket and jabbed a fork in?
Oh no, we're now being electrocuted. Oh, this is not good.
So yeah, anyone who's interested in this, we're planning on doing a special episode in a couple of parts that should dive into this a bit more. I don't want to spoil anything, especially in case it doesn't work out. But
I suspect it will. But anywho, should I get to my awards?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention really quick before you start to do your awards. You've been doing your awards for several episodes now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we really haven't given them the appropriate weight and gravity of awards.
Well, some of them are just kind of jokes and tongue in cheek here.
Well, of course they're gonna all be jokes, but still, we need some like awards show music or something.
Now, if we have the fans for it to this point, get us some awards show music.
At the very least, we can do the kind of drum rolly thing. All I have is a pencil. I don't know how this is picking up on mic, but
anywho, my first award is the Evil Twin Award for an entire copy of Earth that has somehow worse problems than we have on ours.
That's a heck of an evil twin.
Yes, evil twin of an entire planet.
Should we make the thumbnail for this episode Earth with a goatee?
That'd be glorious. My second award is Shut Up Wesley for Obnoxious Minors.
Oh yes, I hope we don't hit that one too much.
And my final award here is the Highlander Award for Functional Immortality. There's you can sort of live forever, but there's going to be some things that are going to have some problems here.
It's going to be a catch. Though if they hadn't run out of food, I still say that most of those kids would have lived into their millions.
Yes. Unless they decide to go full Highlander.
They might.
There can be only one bonk bonk.
I'm very surprised it didn't go there. Given how dumb did people in the 60s think children were?
Extremely?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's just Gene Roddenberry. I don't know.
It might have been. Well, if we're wrapping up, I have a couple of interesting little things from this episode.
Go for it.
So, this episode was actually banned after its original airing in England on the BBC.
Oh, yeah, I noted this one down, too.
Yes. It's for the blood, I guess.
Yes.
It's a little odd. Didn't begin re-airing until the 90s, in fact.
It was banned due to the involvement of madness, torture, sadism, and disease.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
The other thing, which I think goes to something you alluded to in the beginning with the exterior shots, this was shot on the outdoor set for the Andy Griffith Show.
So wait, it's set in the exact same town as the Andy Griffith Show?
Apparently, but later these were some of these little kids. What was that kid's name? Okie or something?
I don't remember.
I haven't seen the Andy Griffith Show in so long.
Yeah, same here. So this establishes that the Andy Griffith Show and Star Trek are in the same continuity, 100%. Sure, right?
Yeah, but the Andy Griffith Show just takes place on an alternate Earth that's exactly the same as our Earth until a few years after this, one of them invents a virus that kills everyone.
Yes. So obviously the Andy Griffith universe is or planet Earth is the one that's more screwed up than ours.
Yes,
somehow.
this is the Desilu continuity.
Which I suspect probably all links back to St. Elsewhere at some point.
I'm sure. I'm completely sure.
Like everything else does.
Yeah, we could look that up. I'm sure there's a way that Star Trek connects into that.
By the way, I did look up Adam Frank's Wikipedia article, and he does work with somebody I know, or at least it has in the past. So.
Interesting.
Yes.
So
maybe I did run into it at some point.
Yeah, you have direct knowledge. We could talk to him about why he thinks other civilizations would have radios. I think he did address that in the interview. I'm being unfair, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess the question of radios and other things as far as alien civilizations goes kind of comes back to that guns, germs, and steel sort of thing. That yes, there are parts of the world that had some of the things that Mesopotamia had, but they didn't have like all of them, so they were not going to be, expansive civilizations that, had influence all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on gun germs and steel.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, also I don't know. I feel that the basic premise of the arguments is somewhat thin.
A little bit, yeah. But we can go to that another time then.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to cultural appropriation and colonialism in here sooner or later.
This is a show about traveling through space and setting up colonies places.
I mean, in fact, I'm 100% certain we're going to get into colonialism with the Near Earth Indian episode.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't look forward to.
So, everybody, that's something to not look forward to in the future, I guess.
Yeah. What are we looking forward to in the future? I'm probably going to edit this out, but I forgot to look up the name of the next episode.
The next episode is the Dagger of the Mind. There's only one done there, so It's Dagger of the Mind is the next episode. Yes, I think this might have some Vulcan mind melding in it. Ooh, yes. So Spock shows off his mental powers.
I saw something that in the synopsis that popped up on Amazon that made me think of another Stargate episode. So we might be talking about Stargate again. The Mad Doctor escaping from a prison colony. I think that was Stargate season 1.
I'm not remembering this one. I was the thing that the synopsis maybe reminded me of was that Next Generation episode where Riker's like in a mental institution.
Ah, yeah, that was an odd episode.
Yeah, it's like what's real, what's not real, we don't know.
No one can ever know.
No.
Well, we will see how close any of those get to anything next week.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Kirk is finally sent to prison for his crimes.
Oh God, it's about time.
You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that is now, no longer exists.